Nice. Okay, perfect. Hello, hello. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much. This should be a great panel. Appreciate everybody joining here today. Again, my name is Justin Krauss. I'm a managing director at JP Morgan, part of our $1.5 trillion security and resiliency initiative. Super exciting initiative that we're working on right now. And this is my third year here. Every year's been incredible. Tim and the team do an incredible job, so very excited to be here today. And we have a really terrific panel of folks. And so now that we kind of get everybody settled a little bit, maybe give them a second to introduce themselves. But we definitely want to get to questions as soon as possible, because you don't want to hear a banker talk, you want the founders to talk. So we'll just get your questions ready. We got some mics out there to get you guys up there first. But why don't we start, Mark, do you want to start, just quick introduction?
Well, hello. It's great to be here. Thank you, Tim, for inviting me. I'm so excited to talk to all of you. My name is Mar. I'm one of the founding partners at PearVC. We are an early stage fund, and what I mean early, I mean really, really, really early. So we actually back people when there is one founder or two or three, and there's practically nothing. Rarely a product and almost never customers. So it's very scary, but it's also amazing to partner with founders to get them to that stage. So we invest in any vertical. I always say anything that could make money, we're good with, so just bring it on. So anyways, excited to be here.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Shahin, partner at Lux. We're a venture capital firm, been around for 25 years. We invest across healthcare and technology. We've funded hundreds of companies over the course of 9 funds. Current fund is a $1.5 billion fund, $6.5 billion total under management. We cut checks from $100,000 to fund founders out of their dorm rooms, all the way to $100 million to double down on our favorite companies and companies that we missed when they were earlier. I'm an electrical engineer by training. I joined the firm 20 years ago. I've led our investments in semiconductors, rockets, satellites, driverless cars, aerospace and defense broadly, and infrastructure and tools as it relates to AI and cool applications. So it's a pleasure to be here.
Hi, everyone. I'm Shruti Gandhi. I run Array Ventures. We're also early as we can be. And our check sizes are anywhere from $250K to $3 million. We call it inception formation rounds. Oftentimes we help companies get to that point. And my background was as an engineer for a decade. So started investing in AI data infra companies, and it's evolved into that and every vertical we can invest in. We've also backed a couple veteran founders, so excited to be here.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jake. I'm a general partner at Emergence. If you were to look at the panel, these women are more early stage. We are more kind of middle stage. I don't know what you'd call us. Middle stage sounds kind of sad, but we're investing out of $1 billion fund. We'll do early stage. We'll do through some growth rounds as well. We do a lot of Series A's. The firm has done a lot of SaaS historically. More recently, we've been doing a lot of AI native services businesses, as well as some robotics and some agentic software, as many people are. So very excited to be here. I've been at Emergence for 12 years since Tim and I graduated from grad school together. So I've known Tim for, 14 years now.
Excellent. Well, thank you all. Why don't we start, and obviously we have a heavily veteran crowd here, almost all veteran crowd here, talking a little bit about what are the top qualities, Mar, maybe we'll start with you, top qualities you look for in any founder, and again, you're meeting them right at the beginning. And then maybe if you can extend that to sort of talk about, what unique advantages do you think veteran founders have?
This is the question I always get, and I think people are expecting like a list, and you check those 3 boxes, and boom, you get funded. It's really hard, and I always ask people, well, could you give me 3, if you're single and you're looking for somebody to join you in your life, give me 3 things you're looking for. It's really hard, and it depends on the day. So, we're looking for leaders at the end of the day, because you're backing somebody that's going to run a company when things are tough and when things are good, and they have to hire, they have to close a customer, they have to go out and raise money. So you're looking for that. I think, put on the spot, which I am, I will tell you that the most important thing is having somebody who almost has a chip on their shoulder. They have to make it happen. Some people confuse that with ambition. That's part of it, but just some people can't let it go. They go to bed and they're just thinking about that startup, and they dream of the startup. It's not a sport. They are the startup. I don't know. It's hard to describe, but some of those people exist. I think number two, I would say, is, people say people with a vision. Sequoia says clarity of thought. I think that's better. It's like people that can actually communicate what their why should they spend their life working on this? Why? Why is it worth it to spend 15 years, 20 years of your life doing this? And I always ask that question. Why is it worth it? And you'll be surprised at the answers. Anyways, and the last thing I would say, the third, I think the third thing is people that are self-aware. I think the most important thing, there's the paranoid only survive, people with no ego, but people that know that it's not enough to be the best today. You have to be the best every day and keep growing and be a little scared of what could be behind you, but also optimistic. So anyway, self-aware is a good word. In terms of the VEDs, we have some of companies in the portfolio, but I also teach at Stanford, and a lot of my students happen to be VEDs, which is great. And I would say that one of the greatest characteristics is that they're calm under bad situations. And a startup is like a journey of things going wrong. Sometimes they go right, okay, but you forget about it. And the best CEOs, when something is awful, like they lose their main customer, they don't close a round of financing, whatever it is, they lose their CTO, whatever, they don't panic. And I think you need a cold head to actually function in a very high stress environment, which is what a startup ends up being.
Shahin?
Going down the line. So, this game, this venture capital startup game is an outlier game. If you look at all of the positive outcomes, if you look historically, if you look at the opportunities at the time, whether it was Google, whether it was Facebook, Stripe, SpaceX, Tesla, we can go down the list, like none of them really made sense based on conventional wisdom at the time. So, just to reinforce everything Mara was saying, it is a little naive to try to go down through a list of attributes to be a fit to raise venture capital, because again, that puts you in the mean, and being in the mean in this business means, losing all your money. In fact, the average venture capital firm loses money. And so we as a venture capital firm need to be an outlier. All of us on this stage need to be, top quartile, top decile funds. It's kind of like, 51% of all, people thinking they're better than average drivers. It's like the same case, an order of magnitude, more difficult in the venture game. And then that puts even a greater onus on you guys in this audience to beat the odds and build outlier companies. So there really isn't a rule, but there are some attributes that are absolutely required to even play the game. And that, to the point Mara was making, is that you have to be an excellent storyteller. What does that mean? To be able to tell a story that helps people understand and really grasp and appreciate the magnitude of what you're doing. If you look historically at the venture business, there are fewer and fewer companies, outcomes that are accounting for the greater portion of returns. So the number of companies is shrinking, and those few companies are getting bigger. So the question for us on this panel is, are you going to be one of those companies? And for you to be able to communicate that, yes, indeed, you will be one of those companies, you have to tell a big story, and we have to believe it. And not only do we have to believe it, it's the employees that you plan to recruit, the co-founders that you plan to recruit, they also have to buy in to that vision. So the first step, what is that big vision? Second step, can you convince a group of skeptics, your spouse, your co-founder, your early employees, and eventually us, that you can actually realize to communicate that vision and help us understand, help us appreciate how you will achieve that big vision.
I mean, you guys did a very good job, and I'm sure I'll agree with what Jake says too.
I'm going to say something totally weird.
Well, here's the thing. I would love all these qualities in our founders, and the thing is, when we invest, it's one meeting. I haven't known the founders that long. I wish I could get all this data on understanding how you think in crisis, and I just don't have that data. And so I think clarity of thought for sure matters, because if you can explain it to me, and I'm hoping you're smarter than me, so I want to invest in you. The other thing that helps with is creating a vision that is bigger than you. And I think in my experience of investing in over 100 plus companies, I've found that to be the most frustrating, where I find founders kind of having a very small trajectory to where they want to go. And oftentimes, it's not their fault or mine or whatever. It's just that, when we start from the idea phases of something and you just want to solve something and the pain point, you forget to look far out. And your milestone ends up being like, oh, just a Series A or something, that is unachievable in that moment. But the thing is, the best founders are thinking the chess moves or go moves, much further out. And those that can take that complexity, boil it down, and still communicate more clearly and think beyond themselves on, I want to solve for this, that is not just a valuation or a problem, but a massive industry level change or something, some behavioral thing, but with keeping me there, grounded there, not just like sounding all over the place. Those are the founders that are easy to get behind. And I think that those people are rare. And when you see them, you kind of want to be on their side. Anyway, so there's a lot of things that are going to get said, but at this stage we fund, some of these things don't come through yet, and then you learn over time and you grow and you get better.
I do think that the art of venture, at the end of the day, and I think you guys all know Pejman, my partner, is actually trying to have some framework for figuring that out with very little information. I think that's why this job is so hard. We make so many mistakes. It looks like we are geniuses here. We make so many mistakes, just so you guys know.
By the way, the irony is that as a venture capitalist, by definition, you are wrong the vast majority of the time. Almost all, we are wrong almost all the time. If we're any good, that means we are wrong almost all the time. We survive in this business in the few occasions when we're right. Those need to be big enough. So we can't be mostly wrong and then right, but not right in a big way. We need to be right in a big way, hence our desire for the big swings.
Jay? I don't have a ton to add. I guess a framework that is kind of wacky to think about, like Mars' challenge on framework that I have used on this question is I spend a bunch of time with the founder, and then I ask myself the question, would I work for him or her? It's a very qualitative question, but it sort of gets to Shahin's point, which is if I would work for him or her, then they're probably good at developing a followership of employees, of customers, of investors, et cetera. The real way I metricize this is through my wife. In that my wife has better judgment in many ways than I do, in so many ways. And has had a successful career in startups. And so I often have a founder meet my wife before I decide to invest in him or her. And then I ask my wife, would you work for this person? And she's chosen pretty well. And so it's like a little secret weapon I've got.
I'm going to send my founders to your wife.
Amazing. So question, how many folks out here are founders in the audience? How many are first-time founders? Okay, got it. So pretty good group of first-time founders. So I guess, Shruti, maybe I'll come to you, sort of thinking about, in that you're investing very early, right? and you look at that group of first-time founders out here, right? What, I mean, a lot of common hurdles, access to capital, right? So on and so forth. But like, are there other things, like qualitative things or other things you see that early founders, first-time founders particularly struggle with sometimes that you help with or that you're helping try to solve?
Yeah, actually, most of the founders we back are super technical. And technical doesn't just mean coding. It could mean, something you know really well about your industry. And oftentimes, they're so passionate that they're not able to communicate with clarity. And I think I actually like those first meetings where they're all over the place. Because I think there's a sign of sometimes a smart person who's unbaked. And so we meet founders that early anyway. What I want to see is that progression from there after we give them the feedback to how they come back to that clarity, right? Like, I've been an immigrant with no direction from folks for many parts of my life. Even when I started in venture, I really didn't have that many folks I kind of knew in the industry, and I'm one of those founders that come across that way. Mm-hmm. And so I'm craving for that feedback. Oftentimes when people tell me, I take that and I try my best. But what's missing, especially in a first-time founder, especially in a founder who's not Silicon Valley native and has these connections with VCs and so forth to polish their pitch before, is someone just telling them like, hey, you're thinking too small. Like, VCs don't want this kind of like a path to exit story or 100 million only kind of revenue, like whatever it is in this market that you need to do, and you want to see what they do after that. And so I'm pretty honest with them, and I think that's because I had craved that, and I think it works really well for folks who are craving that. And then are taking that feedback into growing into something and making it something really meaningful.
Anybody have anything to add to that? Or?
Well, I will just say I love first-time founders because one of the, again, I'm going to make an analogy, but it's like a kid with a new thing. They're so excited about doing this startup, and I think they are so optimistic, at least at the beginning. They don't know what's coming, but they're so optimistic, and that's why they do it. It's almost irrational in a sense if you take the odds that Shahin was just talking about. So, I think the biggest challenge is, I find, because I think a lot of the companies come with a hypothesis. Hey, I believe this customer has a problem, or I believe there's an opportunity for this. I'm gonna go build that product, and then. The hurdles begin, and it's mostly rejection. It could be rejection from venture. They tell you, hey, your market is not big enough, or hey, you need a different team, or whatever. It could be rejection. You spend a lot of time building your product, it doesn't work, your customers don't want it. So I think the best skill for first-time founders is to remain positive, but take each rejection as a moment of learning. And if you go and let's assume you're trying to get funded and nobody's giving you money, okay? A bad founder will say, oh, the VCs don't know anything, they suck. They actually are wrong 9 out of 10 times. So that's what they say. A good founder is like, okay, I'm gonna work as hard as I can to try to get the truth out of these people, because we are very bad at telling you the truth. And you have to send a note that says, hey, it would really help me in my journey if you told me, what could I do to get this funded? And I think most of us will respond, but you have to ask, right? And you'll be surprised, when I had a lot of time, I used to always tell people, no, and I'm happy, you can call me if you want to. And I can tell you why. I could, and I'm wrong often. And I would say, oh, my phone is going to be ringing off the hook. But people are so upset when you say no that, about 50% of the people would take me up, maybe less than 50%. So if people tell you no, why? Why is a customer saying no? Why is an employee saying no? Why is a VC saying no? don't think you're smarter than them. That goes back to self-awareness, so that's my advice to everybody.
All right. Jake, so founder-investor alignment, right? And sort of taking those first steps so they've built a relationship with you and I guess your wife, as you said. And so now you're on the journey together, right? What advice, and again, we have a lot of first time and some repeat founders, like what advice do you have about building that alignment and building those goals when invariably you're going to have bumps in the road the whole way through?
I think it's tempting. It's really hard to go from pitching your business to then being vulnerable, right? Because you're in this mode where you're trying to convince other people to come on the journey with you, and then someone or some people are like, I'm in, and then the moment switches and you're supposed to have them, in the tent and be fully aligned with them. But like human nature, it's hard to flip your brain because you've gone from like, I am confident, I know everything to, okay, now you know the warts of my business. I think the best founders and the best founder and VC relationships operate with a crazy level of transparency and feedback. I'm having a conversation with one of my founders right now that's like a lot of feedback both ways, and it's helpful. And I think that's also a really important point. Part of the way to get founder-investor alignment is it's not a one-way street, in the sense that it's not just like the founder reporting to the VC on what they're doing and the VC giving feedback. The feedback also needs to come from the founder on how the VC is showing up. Right? There's a certain value proposition that we commit to when we decide to partner, and it's important that we hear the feedback from the founders. Like, are we delivering on that? Like, what are the things I said I would do, I said my firm would do, and are we doing a good job, a bad job, a great job, whatever, so that we can get better. And I think just like any human relationship, if there's vulnerability and feedback and transparency, it becomes this really beautiful and robust and wonderful thing. It's also about bringing them into your life. Like one of my founders came to dinner last night and I took a picture of my daughter putting him to bed, which is like he fell asleep on the couch kind of. And like, there's these moments that like are beautiful and human, and it's important to share those. I'm a singer, as at least one person in this audience knows. And I often make music with my founders if they're musical. I find that the act of creating music with other people is a really amazing way to build like a connection that you can't put in words. There's just like something very deep about that. There you go. So find the common things. I'm touching a lot here on the soft stuff because the hard stuff is a little clearer. I think the hardest part about this relationship is the mentality flip, and then finding ways to be vulnerable.
Excellent, thanks. Anybody add anything to that part?
I would just say so long as your ambitions meet the ambitions of your investors, then you're aligned.
And Shahin, on exit multiple, on like, what would you say meeting the ambition of?
And that ambition being building a monopolistic, once-in-a-generation company. If that's what you're doing, if that's what you're aiming for, then you're 100% aligned with your investor.
Okay, there we go. So actually, Shahin, maybe stay with you for a second. So a ton of expertise with deep tech startups and space and semis and others. Challenging from a science standpoint and then a scaling standpoint, attracting capital standpoint. Like when you think about these problems, the science is always settled and now it's about like the scaling piece, or like how do you approach, especially when they're more deep tech, scientific problems?
Well, I mean, first of all, in most examples, in most occasions, the technology doesn't work. I mean, every single investment I've done has had some major restarts on the technology side. So the biggest mistake that I would make on a regular basis early in my career was diligence the technology to death. Now I realize that like this shit's probably gonna get thrown out the window. And so what's the point in even bothering diligencing this? So what I spend more time working on is understanding, what the founders know and knowing what they don't know, and having the ability to attract the talent to ultimately figure this out, whatever the problem is, ranging from driverless cars to novel chips to AI to design those novel chips, whatever it is. And so this goes back to being able to recruit. And so what I spend more time on is, okay, does the founder or the team understand where the problems are likely going to be, and do they have the intellectual horsepower, the reach, the network, the salesmanship to be able to attract what is likely going to be people that have many other options, that are hiring out of a very competitive talent pool. And if I feel good about that, then the technology ultimately gets figured out.
Excellent. Changing gears a bit and maybe going backwards a little bit, but when you think about pitches, what I'd love to hear is, I'd love to hear from all of you actually, first of all, roughly how many pitches do you hear a year? Like, however you range, it would be great just to put in perspective, for the audience. And when you think about like strengths and weaknesses, and there'll be sort of a thing, but just to hone in on that a little bit, like when someone comes in like a pitch that really resonates, or frankly doesn't, advice for obviously a lot of founders here in the room. And Mar, maybe we can start with you.
Me?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, pitches. Yes, I probably see thousands a year. Just think I'm working all the time, and the day has maybe 10 hours of work. So just do the math. My pitches are 30 minutes. Sometimes they're 20 minutes. Sometimes,
Sometimes they're 10 seconds.
Sometimes they're 10 minutes because we have to get through application. We run an accelerator program called PearX. There's thousands of applications. I have to screen them. So, anyways, it's some student at Stanford has claims that I sit on a chair, people come for 3 minutes and I say yes or no. It's not that bad, but it's getting there, So very fast. So you have to be very articulate, right? Very articulate, and again, the clarity of thought in describing why is it worth it for you and for us to be partners in building this company. So, I think there's so many mistakes. I'm happy to share if anybody wants in here. Like I have a whole thing about how to pitch. But I think what is really important for me to understand when I talk to somebody is, can they quantify the value, the economic value that their product will deliver? Okay, and that's really important. It's not just how is it going to be great, it's how many dollars will you save, or how much more revenue will they have, or what market will you open. And that then helps me translate it into market, into what type of go-to-market they're going to need to build, et cetera, and I can have a conversation. But you will be surprised how few people are able to articulate it crisply, with a number. And I think I'm that type of investor. The good news is that there are so many investors and we all have different things. It's like the same that not everybody marries the same wife or husband. It's the same for founders and early stage investors. Everybody has different taste. That's the founder I like. So, I'm more analytical. I have an engineer. I'm an engineer by training, so that's how I think.
Shahin?
Same as Mar. I see it a ton. I haven't bothered counting, but like they're just coming in on a regular basis. When I hear a pitch, being an engineer myself, it's very hard for me not to nerd out with the founder. I'm kind of like restraining myself from like nerding out and going into the weeds. Ultimately, what matters is how this pitch lands on where it's important, which is future investors, future talent, future partners, future vendors, future customers. So what's going on in the back of my head is, okay, I just heard this pitch. If I was Lockheed Martin, for example, would I buy this trinket from this rinky-dink company? If I was a supplier, a major supplier to this company, would I take a risk on selling them product when I'm already backlogged, with my product? So that's going through my head, and so my advice for you guys is don't worry about us. Don't worry about the investor. Think about that audience. Think about the customer, high quality talent, future kind of like investor who doesn't care about the technology, just cares about your numbers. Partner and vendor, like those people, try to cater your pitch towards impressing those characters, and that kind of will culminate into something that'll make an investor feel comfortable. Because again, like we matter the least. It's those cohorts that ultimately make you successful as a company, and you need to be able to communicate with them. Your story needs to resonate with them, and we're here trying to feel comfortable that ultimately you'll be able to do that.
Yeah, customers are king, right? Like, and it's even more relevant now in the world of AI we are in today. We joke on the back end, we have labeled categories of companies based on the companies we first time saw in that category. We're like, this is like Quincy, this is like so-and-so. And we have a pool of companies there. And it's become that way more and more because it's so easy to start a company now. There used to be a time when I used to be like, if I didn't see a company, start a company in my category, I was a bad VC. It's completely shifted now. There's a company starting by the second. And so, you know, the way we evaluate that is like, what is going to be the unfair advantage for this company, founder, product, whatever it might be that they've communicated with us to stand out against a crop of hundreds of other companies in that category if we're going to take a bet. I would be lucky to think like, you know, a category like Shahin maybe is investing in something that is super ultra science forward and defense and whatever, that is maybe one out of, you know, 5 of those companies, maybe, I don't know. But most of the times in this software world, it's super crowded. So the pitch needs to really get to it and really needs to kind of boil down into like, here's why I'm going to win.
Jake?
I don't have a lot to add. The concept of what unfair advantage reminds me of a framework that I like a lot. There's a book called Pattern Breakers that Mike Mapleman and Peter Zeibelman wrote, and it talks about like what makes an outlier of a company. And the concept is most outlier companies take advantage of some inflection. There's something that takes place outside of their company that allows the company to only be built just now, and they have some unique insight on how to take advantage of that inflection. So Uber, for example, you know, inflection in this case would be the fact that, you know, these phones, we have phones now, and the phones have geolocation and GPS, et cetera. The insight is you can take advantage of that and have people share their cars to do it. Originally black cars, but then this. Like that's, you know, there's a lot of things that Travis did to be successful, and a lot of it, to Shahin's point, is about being a leader. Which is why, like, it's funny because you guys keep hearing about like all these things where you need to show up as a leader to get people to follow you. You guys are professional leaders. So like, when I think about the audience we're speaking to, you guys should be better suited than the average founder to create followers.
Actually, it's a great point. Maybe we can pick up on that, and would love for people to share. Obviously, with an audience full with mostly vets here today, when you think about investing, some of you have, I think, invested in veteran-led companies, and maybe some not. It would be great to hear, and it sounds like from your perspective, leadership and sort of already inspiring followership, I guess. Jake, not to put words in your mouth, is a point. Would other folks add to that in terms of, and you think about veteran founders, like what resonates with you?
I mean, like he said, it's a leadership aspect. One thing founders tend to lose sight of, I don't know if they get intimidated by investors or they just feel overwhelmed, but there's too much focus on the asset, on the widget, on the trinket, on the technology. And the reality is that technologies get obsolete, you know, widgets get obsolete. If you have some engagement with a customer, well, guess what? Customers churn. But ultimately what we're investing in is the company. Is you as a leader, and you've demonstrated leadership already to the point that was made in the past, and building a group of people that believe in a goal, believe in a vision that is greater than the sum of its parts, that can achieve the impossible, that could achieve the seemingly impossible. If you look at all these companies out there right now, I mean, Palmer Luckey literally would get laughed out of rooms like this back in 2017, 2018, and now he's built a generational company. He has created a future with his team, obviously, that has been able to do the impossible. So what we look for are the people, because ultimately we're investing in companies. What's a company? A company is a group of people. We're looking at you to assemble and lead those people that will ultimately accrue value while technology, again, gets obsolete, trinkets get obsolete, customers churn, markets change. All that for us changes. What stays is the power of the people you aggregate and lead.
I'll say I've backed a couple of venture founders, and the thing that I really, obviously like the obvious stuff that is like resilience, crisis management, all that is great. Discipline, structure, amazing. Stamina. Those are some really positive qualities. The thing that I was amazingly surprised with was the idea of community. Each one of you has probably like seen a lot of bad things and had a lot of great folks by your side. And in our companies that are founded by veterans, we've had some amazing community come in and help in the time of our crisis, just pro bono, or just people coming in to save something for that person because they've been there with them somewhere in another lifetime. Powerful, very powerful, and I think we're lacking that as a society generally, which doesn't come, like a lot of us, move around so many times and so forth. There's not that many people in our lives that we can count on for that kind of fallback outside of your family and loved ones in the close circles. But what I found in this veteran community, that was pretty powerful. I was super impressed with that kind of village that you kind of come with as a founder when you're from that community.
Excellent. Okay, now it's your turn. So question time. We've got a couple microphones here. There we go. We got one come right here. Or I'm sorry. Let's go this way and then that way.
Hello, everyone. I am a technical founder, and I've been blown away with what's happening with Cloud Code. My startup more than doubled the work and reduced the engineering team in more than half in the last year. And that brings a lot of questions to me. So my question is about moats and about how VCs are thinking about that. Today, there is more than 1 out of 5 businesses in RAM that pay for Anthropic. And what I'm seeing as an engineer myself is that the cost of building software is tending to zero. It used to be the case that you needed great engineering teams 50 miles from here that could build great products, and that would give you a defensible business and moat because no one else could build that. But today, I feel like anyone is able to build that. So I think that, maybe I'm totally wrong, but like profit margins that these startups used to have is going to decrease, especially in SaaS, because there's going to be more competition, and pricing is going to be a race to the bottom in a way. So when you're making your investment decisions in SaaS businesses today, either in your portfolio or new investments, how are you weighing that into future moats for the years to come, especially on software startups?
I'm happy to take a first stab at this. So I posted literally a framework to answer this question this morning on LinkedIn, and I don't have like a way to present it, but if you go to my LinkedIn profile, you'll see like a spectrum I drew that explains my answer to software moats. So at the highest level, we are moving to a world where you're selling software. You used to sell software. People are now selling outcomes. And those outcomes can come in the form of agents that are delivering it. Some people are delivering the outcome fully, and that's what we call an AI native service. So you're not selling software at all. You're selling a service. But your question was specifically to software SaaS moats and where do those go over time. So the framework I laid out is a spectrum of like what I think what moats are eroding that used to be really strong, and what moats are emerging that could be strong in this new era. And on the eroding side of things, the first one I listed was workflow. So historically, SaaS has been sticky because lots of people use it. So switching off of Salesforce sucks because your whole company or your whole go-to-market org is in it every day, and retraining them on some new CRM would suck. In a world where agents are doing most of those tasks, switching away from that workflow is actually not that hard. So that is going down as a moat. Another important moat in historical SaaS land was integrations. Like you'd built a ton of integrations for your thing, and your thing was integrated with a lot of stuff, so it was hard to rip out. In a world of MCP, those integrations also, I think, become less interesting. And then if you move over to stuff that like might be more interesting as moats, one emerging moat is context, is having more information about what's happening, right? So on the topic of Cloud Code, I built this thing yesterday that has been very helpful for me in the past like 24 hours just with Cloud Code, and it's all about context. I had Cloud Code pull from my meeting notes, like the meeting notes app that I use in all my meetings, and I had it sync with Slack, my email, and my calendar. And I wrote a script that basically has every day at 5:30, it checks all the verbal commitments I made in my meetings in terms of my to-dos, and then it references it against what I've done in Slack, email, and calendar to see if I've done it. And if I haven't, it alerts me. And then the next step of this, I'll obviously try to program it doing the task for me. But that's an example. Like there's so much context involved in kind of getting a job done. And I think many applications today don't have that full context. And I think the ones in the future will have more of it. The two other moats that I think are under-discussed in this era are two moats that have existed for technology in a long time, but for whatever reason, they're not being talked about a lot in AI. One is brand. And brand is also about trust, right? In an era where anyone can build anything, a lot of what you're looking for in a vendor is trust. And so their brand is something that you are buying by giving them money. And then the last one is network effects. It's kind of crazy to me that we're not talking about network effects anymore. Like if we think about some of the biggest business successes, the past 20 years, be it the Ubers of the world or the LinkedIns, we have a company called Doximity, which is LinkedIn for doctors. Those things create a lot of value in part because every time a new person comes, the product is better for everyone else. It is probably true that network effects from a workflow perspective are going to become less important over time if agents are doing more of the work. But from a data perspective, they actually become more important. Like think about LinkedIn. If there's a bunch of agents that are on LinkedIn doing the hiring stuff going forward, and it's not humans that are doing that, LinkedIn is still the place that captures all of that data. And so they have a huge data network effect. So that's a very long answer to your question. You can see a kind of pretty drawing that I made using Cloud Cowork in the LinkedIn.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Mark. Yeah.
Hey, Jordy. I would say, I just want to add a couple of things. I do think that is harder. It's harder for everybody. It's harder for the founder. It's harder for the investors. It's harder every year. Even without AI, it was getting harder. I'm going to tell you a story which will, it even surprises me, but I was diligencing a legal tech company. And you're like, well, why would you do a legal tech company? There's so many legal tech companies. It's all done, right? And I called the customer. I wasn't Diligence Harvey, it was some competitor. And the customer was like, oh my gosh, I love the CEO. I love this company. It's amazing. It was just a wrapper around ChatGPT. And I said, have you tried Harvey? No, this is so much better. I'm like, why is it so much better? And a lot of it was workflow. Like she was like, I can save my file here. And then she told me something that I was like, oh my God. She said, this is so good that on Friday, when I go out on a date with my husband, I ask where to go. So that's how much of a wrapper it is. And I realized, and they're paying like, I don't know, 100 times more than what they would pay for a subscription of ChatGPT. There's no logic. There's absolutely no logic on that customer. But she loved it. And I think most humans outside of the Silicon Valley like the workflow, because they live in a workflow. Even if it's easy to write a book, not everybody writes a book. And there's bestsellers and there's crappy books. Same with new software. The other thing is, I think like Jake, you said, that brand is so, the last mile of human interface is so powerful. So how are you going to talk to that customer? I think the product designer becomes it's going to be almost like the software engineer of the 2010s. It's going to be the new hero of the story. So anyways, I'm an optimist since I'm investing. I think there's still, places to invest. It's just you have to be better than you used to be to succeed.
Thank you, Mark.
Thanks. Sir? Yep.
Thank you so much for the valuable knowledge. Charles Masters Rodriguez, co-founder and CEO of Supply Veins. We're an AI-native supply chain software that helps manufacturers flawlessly execute procurement. We're about to close a tier 1 manufacturer for Toyota, and we're currently fundraising. My question would be, can you tell me about a time that you strongly disagreed with one of your portfolio founders, and how did you both handle that situation? Thanks.
Never happened. No, I'm joking.
I mean, I disagree with my founders all the time. I mean, but they're the one. I mean, the reason why I'd always go back to, hey, that's why you funded this team, because they know this better than anybody else. And so if you have faith, if you have trust in the team, then if they say something that doesn't quite make sense to you, then you ask them, like, what was the thought process here? And then you ultimately trust their judgment because you got behind them. Now, there are many occasions when they come to you and they say, hey, Shahin, in your experience, since you see companies go through this on a regular basis, and in your experience, how would you recommend we handle this? And I say, well, here's my 2 cents. But ultimately, you trust their judgment because, going back to all the earlier things we said on the panel, we're ultimately backing people, and we're backing we're trusting their judgment, ultimately.
I can say a couple of things. Yes, you have a relationship with somebody. There's never 100% alignment. It's a relationship at the end of the day. I would say that, I think exiting the company, sometimes if you're misaligned at the beginning, there's good companies always have an exit. Always, there's an opportunity to get out. So, for some founders, having a $500 million exit, it's a huge deal. Imagine anybody in this room, how can you say no to that? And you have to have that conversation. Ultimately, it's what the founder wants, because there's no company without the founder. It's just what it is. I would tell you, my job, which is dealing with that 0 to 1, about half of the companies will have to pivot, and I have to have a conversation with the founders where it's like, hey, it's not working out, and we're gonna have to figure out something else. And this is like for them, it's like going through the 5 stages of grief, denial, anger, everything. And I'm like, okay, the fastest we get to acceptance, the better, because we can move on, But they get angry. And then all of them, without a doubt, they'll be like, what's the right call, But I have to force it sometimes. Otherwise, we end up going all the way and then some route that doesn't work.
Awesome. Thank you.
Excellent. Next, yes, sir.
Thank you so much to the panelists for their incredible insights. Jake, I talk to my wife about all my decisions as well. I don't tell my co-founder that. My name is Param Nair. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Type 1 Compute. We're working on novel semiconductors. Everyone's probably seen on the news every week, GPUs consume a lot of power. Data centers require so much more capacity to be added to the grid. And we believe that for AI to scale beyond data centers, it requires a novel paradigm to semiconductors, something that's much more efficient. And so we're working on neuromorphic computing. It's brain-inspired, but really it's ultra-low power compute on the edge. We're currently focused very much on defense as an industry and working with Israel Aerospace Industries and Lockheed Martin on some collaborations in electronic warfare as well as drone perception. And so my question is probably best targeted to Shahin, but would love to hear from the entire panel. When you think of the underwriting the risk associated with something deep tech and semi specifically with CapEx, market integration, education, like Intel and NVIDIA had to teach classes, develop textbooks on the subject matter and literature, how do you underwrite that risk, or what are the milestones you would look for from founders?
The 2 big challenges with semiconductor companies is, one, the latency associated with them. Unlike software, you can have a bunch of folks in a room bang out an application in a matter of weeks, whereas in semiconductors, the timeline is typically years. And more often than not, I've worked closely with companies who have executed, but by the time their chip hits the market, the requirements and the market has moved away. And so they end up in this hamster wheel or this death spiral of having to raise money for the next iteration of the chip in hopes of it meeting the market requirements. That's one big challenge. The second big challenge that a lot of founders don't quite embrace is the software challenge. So when you're building a fundamentally new capability, your customers who don't know anything about transistors need to be able to use it. And to do that, there needs to be a giant software stack sitting on top of your chips. Why is NVIDIA right now a dominant player. If you want to make robots, you want to make video games, you want to make driverless cars, you want to make a simulator, whatever you're doing, NVIDIA has the software for that ready to go. And so you, as a decision maker at a customer who's deciding whether or not to use NVIDIA, have an easy decision in front of you. Do I use NVIDIA and have everything laid out for me, or do I go with this startup that doesn't have all these tools available to me, and I risk losing my job if I'm late? So a lot of chip companies struggle with that, and most companies fail because they run out of money before they're able to solve the software problem. So my advice to semiconductor companies is, one, really understand your market. I know it's really tempting to go out there and hire engineers and license all the IP and tape out the chips, but I feel like those are arbitrary goals, unfortunately set by us investors. And my advice is, don't listen to the investors, listen to the market, understand the market, and maybe delay your chip by a few months or a few years, and understand really where the market's going to be and get it right the first time, and hire a bunch of software people early on. Try to anticipate what the chip is going to be used for and make it brain dead for the end customer to be able to use your chip in their application.
Thank you so much.
Yep, good, sir.
Thank you all for all the advice and input. And my name is Isaac Miller. I am the CEO and co-founder of Arclidian Inc. And just to get right to the question, I've been blessed to be able to bootstrap my business to a point where the proof of concept and MVP is now something scalable. But with that, we actually have been given opportunities to hyperscale it to a lot of people who actually want to use it. And now this is not my first business, but the first one that's actually VC backable. What advice would you give someone in my position on trying to understand how much to raise in order to take advantage of this opportunity of hyperscale when my own background has always been bootstrap, 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 but now actually having something that can hyperscale and wanting it to?
I think these guys do later stage, so maybe they can answer that. I would say be choosy, meaning like if you have a great business, there's so much capital in the market that you should have multiple people that want to work with you. So make sure you diligence whoever you work with, because they're going to spend time with them because they're going to, work with you. VCs have some math to return their funds, so they have to buy at least some percentage of the company, and depends on the fund and the models and so on, but just be aware of that. So I'll just let them answer because they probably deal with that all the time.
I would be cautious about the choice to raise it all.
Yeah.
Like, the reality is most businesses, and perhaps most businesses in this room, should not raise venture capital. Venture capital is jet fuel, to use the analogy that Paul Graham created and is appropriate for this audience. And what that means is you can go faster, but you're more likely to blow up. So you're probably not going to make as much money if you take venture capital than if you do, you individually. So be very, very thoughtful before you take it. I would say that's particularly true in this era, because as has already been discussed here, the efficiency of these AI tools means that you probably don't need as many employees as you once did. We have a couple companies that are north of 150 million revenue with 50 people. And so that's possible now. And so I would don't raise venture capital because it's cool, because you feel like you need to, because we're on the stage and you're not. That's arbitrary. It's raise it only if you really feel like it's a need. And it's hard for me to give you advice without knowing anything about your business. If there's a crazy competitive situation where you're not going to be able to succeed unless you can grow fast enough to keep up with some competitor, then maybe you do need venture capital.
That's part of it, and another part is it's novel new AI technologies that we're building. I kind of accidentally stumbled upon this innovation, and the proof of concept is actually showing that it's working really well. And so now it's just a matter of time before competitors at larger labs are like, oh, there's a vertical here, we want to compete. So that's where I'm like, well, now there's an opportunity where 800 plus customers are like, hey, we want that. And it's like, well, we have enough for the 6 that we're onboarding now. We need to hire a team and scale this up. That's why.
But what do you need a team for?
Pre-training, having more than just me being the CEO, having the understanding of the AI and machine learning and reinforcement learning aspect.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's really hard for me to opine like without like knowing specifics about the business. I would just say like, it could be the case that like what you're describing is a good thing to raise venture capital for, but you may not need to. Like ultimately, particularly like what you're describing is something that sounds like a potential acquisition by a lab, which could make you a lot of money. It would make you a lot more money if you didn't raise venture capital than if you did.
Perfect. Thank you.
And this might be our last one, unfortunately. I'm so sorry, but let's go ahead.
Thank you. I guess I'm lucky today. Thank you so much, everybody. I had a question for Mr. Shahin and Ms. Mar. Shahin, I know you've done some work with Planet and Armada. My company is called MyMFlow. We help predict and prevent water damage 72 hours before it happens in data centers and municipalities. We won TechCrunch Industry Award, and we're a top 5 finalists at South by Southwest. My question to you is, I tried connecting with you on LinkedIn. I know I need your email to do that.
Well, now I have a face on the name, so I'll remember.
So my question is, we would love to partner up with Armada because of what they're working on right now in data centers. So kind of interested to see how we can be able to do that. And a question to Mar, I drive by PearVC all the time. I live in...
so do I.
And I see those sandbags right outside those doors, right there. But
got flooded.
Oh, flooded, yeah, that's probably the reason why. And my question to you, and I've met Pejman before a while back, is, and I wrote down the question actually for you, because I was interested in, would you guys consider leading a seed or co-leading it? And if so, what is the 2 or 3 milestones you need to see in the next 60 to 90 days to do that?
Okay.
I just want to applaud you for shooting your shot, man. Like, it's pretty impressive that you're really, like, this is, like, back to the intensity. Like, it's awkward to do what you just did. And it's mazel tov. Nice job.
Thank you.
Well done.
Just
email me, sf@lux.vc. And that goes for everybody, by the way. My email is my initials, like San Francisco, at lux, which is the name of my firm, .vc, which is what I do. So sf@lux.vc. So all of you, please, if you have any questions, follow-ups, just drop me a line.
But first, send me the email because I come first in the food chain. mar@pair.vc.
There you go.
More pair, okay.
Excellent.
Got it. And Shruti, we're going to have to reach out to you as well.
Thank you. I was feeling left out. It's Shruti at ArrayVC.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Okay. And we have, do you have a question? We probably have we're just 2 minutes, so go for it.
Yeah, why don't you guys write back to me? Hey, I'm Dylan Bodkin, founder of Thucydides Aerospace. We're making agentic loiter munitions. And I'm a new founder, and I can see the vision, the path to a monopoly, but I can also see the closer you get, the more competitors there are going to be, the more traps and obstacles. How do we start talking at that early stage to you, Mar, and you, Shruti? How do we, we're at the very beginning, how do we start talking about that end to the unicorn state and the monopoly play?
I guess you shouldn't in some ways. I mean, you should and you shouldn't. First, talk about what grounds you and makes you so different and unique. And then when those little steps are laid out and someone like me is bought in, it will come down the line of questioning of like, so how do we make this bigger if this works? But I want this to work so we can think of something bigger together, maybe even.
You know, I would say it goes back to the clarity of thought. You know, I think if you're starting a company, at least you should know who is in the market, right? And you should be able to say, hey, there are these competitors. And don't just say they're all horrible. So probably they have business, right? But I think if I do this, I can get my place in the market, and eventually I could be, take over the market, whatever it is. You have to have some vision around it, right? And be able to come across as you did your homework. Like, it's not like a surprise that some company just showed up in that slide. You know what I'm saying? And we know every vertical we invest has a competitor, and there is more competitors per year as our business grows. So we already know. I think we're just looking for who can break through, and you'll be surprised. That's the beauty of startups. People do the impossible, and they break through, right? So can you communicate that in a way that is compelling? And by the way, sometimes 50% of the people will change ideas when they work with us. So it's just about being able to do it once, then I know they may be able to do it again, and that's what I'm looking for.
Thank you.
Perfect. And I think with that, I think we're going to wrap this up. But first of all, you guys heard some great advice from some really first-class VCs about having people with a chip on their shoulder and being able to communicate a vision, maybe not taking VC money, which is just to show the kind of folks these guys are. But I think one thing, and I think this is true, we're all civilian allies, correct? Nobody here is served, is that right? And why I say that is not because we deserve applause, because we don't, because you guys have done the work. But I think what it shows is we know there's a thriving entrepreneurial community here made up of a lot of vets. And so we're really proud to be part of the community and try to support it any way we can. And thank you for the time, and let's thank our panel for some great comments.
Thank you to our moderator.